Hi everyone, today I'm working on the second full moon painting of the series. So if you don't know, every month of the year has a full moon and that full moon has a traditional name, and February's is the snow moon. And this is the first one that I was like most excited about because I instantly had an image of what colors and the feel that I wanted for this piece. So I was really excited to get to this one. So yes, today we're working on the snow moon painting. Last month it was the wolf moon, and yeah, we're going to dig into this one. So actually last month when I worked on figuring out the colors that I wanted to use for the wolf moon, I actually came up with a couple of very different options. And one of those felt perfect for more of a cold moon month. And it didn't really fit as well with the wolf moon. So I knew that it wasn't going to be that one, but it felt so good. I was really liking it. So it was really fun to be able to put that aside and say, that's exactly what I had pictured for my snow moon. And just really quick little self promo. This is actually the print for my Patreon. So if you wanted to get a print of Snow Moon or any other subsequent moons of the year, then make sure to go and follow the link down in the description and be in the print tier. So again, every month this year, I'm going to be doing one of the full moons. So the one associated with that month. I'm really excited about this collection of work to be able to put out to you guys. But yeah, the only way to get the print is to go sign up before the end of this month. So that's only a couple of days left. So I tried something new with this piece and I loved it, absolutely loved it. When I talk about it, it's probably going to sound very subtle, like it wouldn't have had that much of an impact, but it really did. And it helped with a lot of things that I've been wanting to explore with watercolors. So we're going to talk all about that. So today on this piece, I worked with a coal erase pencil instead of a traditional graphite pencil for the line work. So really all that is it's just an erasable colored pencil. It's made by Prismacolor now. I actually got a set of vintage ones from the thrift store before they'd been acquired by Prismacolor. I think it was Faber-Castell before that. Anyways, none of that actually matters. What does matter is that I took the violet and one of the blue pencils, and for the transfer, I used those instead. So usually I will use, again, a regular pencil and just get the line work down, and then I will continue onward. And then at a certain point, I will start covering up those lines with gouache line work. But this allowed it to be so much more immersed with the colors of the piece itself, and it blended in so well. So I chose those colors because they were colors that were going to be present within the watercolors. It was the color palette, so they worked perfectly already. They weren't going to stand out. And I actually ended up leaving quite a bit of the pencil work as the line work, as that little bit of definition that this piece needed. And I didn't cover all of the line work with gouache, which is what I've been wanting to do. I've been wanting to get away from feeling so rigidly restrained by having very clean, sharp line work everywhere. And I'm trying to tweak my process so that I'm more conscious about things that I can do that'll keep the edges tidy that I want to have clean and crisp. And if I keep those clean and crisp earlier on, then I'm not going to feel like I need to cover them up. Anyway, that's a whole nother rabbit hole, but it was just so like perfectly married with the final piece. And I think that's what's so exciting about it, is that what I would typically use felt like a thing that needed covering up. It wasn't something that was part of the final product. I needed to make sure that it was disguised and shifted and changed. And these lines, they felt part of it. They felt like something that could be preserved throughout. And to be clear, I did preserve it throughout a lot of the places in the piece. So like the line work for the skin, I left as the pencil, and the snowflakes, those were also just the pencil. And for the snowflakes, I kept it as just the blue, so that kept it really distinct from the character. But for the character, I used a combination of those two pencils, and that was really fun. I layered it so that it was purple throughout, and then it was blue through most of it. But anywhere that had like a particular highlight or an edge that would have been closest to the light, I actually left that as just the purple, and that allowed it to have a lot of breathing room. It made it feel a little bit more dynamic, and it made the shadowy areas feel a little richer. So this is for sure something that I want to experiment more with and play with more. I will probably try branching out into other colored pencils for the line work. So my caveat with that is that I've done that in the past and I have hated it. And I think the reason that I have hated it is because the pencils have been very soft. So the pencils that I had tried in the past had been more like, that was the intended full medium, I guess, if you could say that, so that I theoretically would have been creating an entire piece with those, and they would need to blend in together. But I need to get a colored pencil that has a really hard lead so that it will hold the point as I'm doing the line work much better. It'll keep it really sharp and clean. So those are the two things, is that when I've used like different colored pencils that have a softer lead, it gets still a lot faster, which drives me crazy. I just want to get into the flow of it. And because they're dull, because they're soft, they kind of skip over the tooth a little bit more, and that makes the line work a little fatter. So with this pencil, it was sharp, it was clean, it was precise, it was where I wanted it. And with the benefit of it being erasable, it allowed me to rework her face, which I really needed to do. I did one pass and then I looked at it a little bit later and I realized how not quite right it was. It wasn't having the anatomy that I wanted. So I could completely rework that and move forward with it, which is what I could do with my regular pencils, and I would do sparingly. And again, I would do it sparingly with these pencils too, because it can wear out the surface of the watercolor paper. So yeah, that was something that I think that I would maybe like to make sure that my pencils are erasable. I'm not sure. I'm gonna do some experimenting. The only limitation with the cold erase pencils is that they are very limited in how many colors you can get, and very few of them are actually available as single colors, so like as a replacement as opposed to a set. Yeah, I want to be able to pick exactly what colors I use a lot of, so I might have to play around and switch to a different pencil, but this technique really, really worked well for me. And I built up the pencil as I worked on this piece too, so it did allow me to clean up and tidy areas that did get a little messy as I was painting it, which for me is necessary, because there's always little areas that I'm just not as precise and sharp with, and then a little bit bleeds over, and I want to be able to clean that up. So yeah, it was all just like a push and a pull of adding more and getting it exactly where I wanted it to be. So I definitely felt like I was playing with this piece, and I loved that feeling. So what I mean by that is usually I try to make sure that I know where every single color is going within that composition. For this one, I knew the overall color palette because, like I said, I'd figured it out with a different piece. So the thumbnail that I had used had very different shapes, and I do not recommend that. It doesn't always like follow over that the colors that you use work with the composition. So I really should have redone the thumbnail to make sure that everything was placed correctly. But I was feeling in the moment. I was feeling like I just wanted to play and explore with this piece. And because I knew I was starting with such light colors to begin with, that it was going to be very high key with a few darker elements, that I could kind of play it by ear a little bit easier than if everything was a little bit more like mid-tone with some highlights and darker contrast, if that makes sense. Because everything could kind of be lifted up to one level, and then I could pick and choose what areas I would make really dark. It let me kind of see the whole vision of the piece at where it was at. So I applied most of the paint down. I got the background as this light blue turquoise color. I think I actually did that in 2 washes with an actual turquoise paint. Teal? Anyways, it was one of the paints that I have. Cobalt teal. That sounds right. So I used that, and that one is actually very, very granulating. It's really opaque. So I don't usually pull for that one, but I loved it in the background here. So I applied it first, and then I used a blue, I don't remember which one, on top of it and glazed with it. And that gave it like this depth and this interest that I feel is often lacking with the more opaque colors, but it also had that saturated vibrancy that teal brought into the play here. So I was really enjoying the background. And her dress was probably the area that I had the least amount of idea of exactly how it was going to come together. So I knew that I wanted it to feel almost like fallen snow, where it was patchy and light and you couldn't exactly see the edges, the defines of it. So as I was applying like what I imagine would be shadow colors in snow to create this like patchy effect over the dress, I also knew that I was going to be coming back in with gouache to add the highlights back in and define that like spotty snow dotted edge a little bit better. So there were areas that as I was working on it, they had a little bit more of like an not organic, the opposite, sharp, I guess, edge to it. So it was a little bit more like crystalline. And I had started painting out the shape of her dress as if it was going to be like ice, but I chose to go away from that and keep it very soft and imprecise at where the edges were. So after I applied all of the like shadows and played with that and got really textural with the watercolors, I did come back with the gouache and then added lots of little like sparkle dots, and that part was so much fun. I loved doing that. And I painted the moon very softly. I actually feel really excited about painting all of these moons because there are certain restraints that are going to go into it. So because they're all full moons, they all have to be the same shape and they all have to be fairly bright. They have to be fully lit to make them an actual full moon. So because it has these constraints, it's going to push me to be a little bit more, hopefully, in the present moment of that watercolor painted moon, so that I can figure out what are some of the shifts in the colors that I can do and the textures and the techniques so that it can have its own personality as opposed to the other ones. So this one was just so much fun. I loved most of it, that paper white, and kept it very soft and hazy. I think I used a Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray, it granulates just a little bit. So it has a little bit of life to it where the pigments shifted and separated, so you can see a little bit more going on, but it's also so subtle because it's so soft. I loved that effect. I'm just so excited to paint all these moons. I love painting moons. I was on the fence. I often feel this way when I'm working on a piece and there's a space that's like paper white that's just left completely untouched, and it just feels so pretty, and I like that intense sharp white color in a piece, or the like unfinished quality to it. And I'm often tempted to just leave it as is or find a way to like adapt it. And that's how I was feeling with her hair in this one. But ultimately I knew that there was just too much white, not enough contrast, not enough to like ground the piece out. So I moved forward with painting her hair a dark color. This is actually Payne's Gray. So again, it like marries everywhere else since there's going to be dark colors. So I like to make sure to do that if I'm using like on almost black watercolor, that I use the same one throughout so that they all have the same color temperature and the way that they react, unless in very specific circumstances, but almost always I will use one singular dark color. Then I worked on the snowflakes. I just tidied up the line work. Essentially, this was a bit of a missed thought, I would say. I'm happy with how it ended up, where it's a very soft, subtle second read because the snowflakes are essentially white on a white moon. So they're very hard to see, but I like that they feel very ethereal, and they're again a second read. If you look at this piece longer, you will see them. But I will say, not having planned that out as the outcome was my mistake. So I didn't really consider or think how much contrast I needed or wanted for the snowflake. So I think that I'm lucky that I ended up liking kind of the equation that I ended up with, and that I'm happy with that. But in the future, I'll make sure to remember that I really should be planning exactly where every value goes in my pieces so that I can be sure that I'm getting the effect that I want for all of the details that I'm putting in. So yes, I will consider that a win in the fact that I was lucky enough that it all kind of worked out. And the final touch I went back in and added Payne's Gray. Yes, it was a small wash of Payne's Gray to the corners of the background. So I felt that it was just a little too unmoored. And I tend to really like this like vignetting effect anyways, where there's a bit of a darker haze to the edges of a piece. It helps bring the eye into the center and brings it back in. And it just felt like it needed a little bit more grounding because of all of the light colors in this piece. So I added that. I was really happy with it. It felt like it was that finishing touch that it needed. I loved working on this piece. It was one of the rare ones that just went so smoothly from beginning to end, and I was really just enjoying it, and I loved the process and the finished product. So I cannot wait. I can't wait to do the next full moon piece. This collection is just really exciting and it has a lot of great ideas for me. So make sure to stay tuned for next month to see how I interpret the full moon of March. But quick reminder, this is the print for Patreon this month. So that means you have till the very last day of February to sign up. So that's the 28th. You've only got a handful of days left. So make sure to follow the link in the description and sign up for the print tier if you'd like to get a print of Snow Moon before time runs out. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time.